I'm Jack Martin. I played Ben Hall.
And didn't you also co-produce the film?
Yes.
I'm Jamie Coffa, and I played John Gilbert, who was the psychopathic, fun-loving larrikin of the group.
Yes, he certainly was.
I'm Matthew Holmes, the writer, director, and producer of the film, and the guy that sort of pulled everyone together into this crazy scheme.
So congratulations on this film.
Thank you.
Just give me some bare facts and figures. How long it took to make, how much it cost, and how much went into the writing of the film.
Sure. Well, I've been writing and working on a Ben Hall script for 9 years, since 2007. We were in production on this version of the film for 2. We kickstarted the film with... we tried to raise $75,000 for a Ben Hall short film in the beginning, and we actually ended up raising about $130,000, and that's what got us off the ground. And sorry, what was your third question?
And I'm keen to know what the budget on the film was.
Okay, the budget, we're not able to disclose the budget.
Okay.
But we were working at a very low level for this kind of scale.
Yes, you
so
were.
It was something, and that was, and we had to think outside of the box a lot in order to achieve what we did.
I kind of sensed that watching the movie. Firstly, congratulations on the film. Mm-hmm. It's a very ambitious movie.
Yes.
Given that it was obviously done on a restricted budget.
Yep, certainly.
I imagine you must have used some low-budget tricks to make the film.
Oh, absolutely. We were constantly finding ways to cut corners and make the movie seem much more bigger and more expensive than it really was.
Right.
That was a constant thing on set. How do we cheat this in the face of not being able to afford it? Really.
You've gone for an epic sweep. Mm-hmm. You've gone for the big orchestral sound, sweeping shots of the landscape, hero shots, sunsets. You're trying to make it look like a big traditional Western.
Exactly,
almost,
yeah. Well, that was always the original vision of the Ben Hall film. When I was writing it, I always thought, I was sitting there on my typewriter going, wow, this is going to cost a fortune. And then when we got the opportunity to turn this short film into a feature, we realised we weren't going to have anywhere near enough money, but we still went, well, you know what, we're still going to try to at least do this.
Were you tempted to reconfigure the film, to rethink the film, to match the low budget that you had?
Some people would have liked me to, yes. No, I didn't want to do that. I had in my head and in my heart the kind of movie I wanted to make and the way I wanted it to look, and I wanted to not be parted from it.
Right.
So I kept that as much as I could. I didn't want to scale it down. In fact, if anything, I kept scaling it up, much to my producer's terror. But you know, we all pulled together and we gave it our best shot.
Okay, now I'll open this up to all three of you. The Ben Hall legend is nothing compared to the Ned Kelly legend. As soon as you mention Australian bushrangers, like it or not, the first thing people think of is Ned Kelly. Can you just tell us why the focus on Ben Hall? Are you intending this film to be a kind of cinematic corrective to the public's memory and awareness of bushrangers?
Oh, absolutely. I do. I always wanted to, when I discovered Ben Hall, I was almost mortified that I hadn't heard of him before. And especially because his story is bigger than Ned Kelly's. And so I thought, well, this has got to be corrected. People should know that there's more than just Ned Kelly out there.
And how did you stumble across him? I mean, I'm presuming that you're too young to know that there was a TV series.
I know about the TV series, but again, didn't know it.
1975, so...
Well, that's right. It ran 2 years before I was even born. Mm-hmm. So my dad remembers it, but I certainly didn't grow up with Ben Hall. It only came about because I was actually lamenting the fact that they had already made a Ned Kelly film, which is something that I wanted to do growing up. And then a friend of mine said, well, you know, why are you worried about that? There's better bushrangers out there than Ned Kelly. Look up Ben Hall, Frank Gardner. And I did just that very night, and that's when I discovered it.
Okay. Now, you play Ben Hall. Describe him.
Describe Ben Hall?
Yeah.
I found him, through my research, of course, to be a fairly reserved, brooding type of character, someone very considered, somebody with a very strong sense of morality and who he was, but unfortunately ended up in circumstances where he couldn't quite live out that sense of himself and that sense of right and wrong.
Mm-hmm. And describe Jack, the
You
character you
described
play.
Happy Jack.
Yeah. Because
Happy,
basically the setup is that there are three guys in the gang.
yeah.
And you play the...
I play
Well-
I play the kind of second in command to Ben Hall. He's basically the polar opposite in character and size as well. Quite short. And Happy Jack is like I was saying, the fun-loving larrikin. He's charismatic. He's a bit of a psychopath. He's a womanizer. He enjoys the thrill, and wherever he goes, trouble follows very, very close behind.
Well, I would put to you that wherever he goes, if trouble doesn't follow, he creates trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
What's it like? Firstly, where's the accent in the film from, and where are you from?
The accent. Gilbert was born in Canada, and he came out to Australia when he was 10 years old. And so with Matthew and I, we sat down, we talked about the accent, and we decided that he would have a Canadian accent. And then on top of that, he would have elements of the Australian accent. And for me, I was born in Australia, but I lived for 17 years in the South Pacific, and I've lived in places like Guam and Nauru, and out there, their accent, they roll their R's a little bit like the Americans, so I've picked that up, which was really lucky because I was able then to just take that and kind of make it a bit more Canadian and chuck some Australian in there and right as rain.
Because obviously the central dynamic dramatically is the tension between you guys. You're the reluctant bush hero, and you're the guy who loves being a bush ranger. I mean, you're the reluctant bush ranger.
I'm fine with hero. You can go.
Yeah, you're a hero. I'm the villain, more or less.
And you're the guy who loves being a bush ranger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what makes it a very interesting relationship, because in theory they really shouldn't like each other, but in a way it's like that old saying, opposites attract. And without the other, they don't really survive very long. They kind of need each other in a way.
Now, this is an early film for all of you. This is your first feature film. You guys have been in short films. Just educate me a bit. You've been in short films mainly, but this is the first major film that you've been in, first feature film.
Yeah.
Is that right?
This is our first. This is my first feature film debut. I've been in short films in the past, and also I was in Channel 9's Gallipoli TV series.
Yes.
As an Anzac, but this is my first feature crazy character introduction to film.
And Jack, this is your first feature as well?
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably my first legitimate work.
And why did you start out as a director, as a writer-director, for your first film with something that's this ambitious? Why not do something smaller and build to something this big? Because I guess an observation that someone could make is that this is a really great concept, and it's obviously a very strong script. It's certainly in certain sequences. Wait for the extra $10 million that you need to make the film the epic that it deserves to be, and make something smaller in the meantime.
Well, that was actually the question. That was the leap of faith I took at one point, knowing that. I mean, when I wrote my Ben Hall script, I had no intention of it being a low-budget, small film. I had every intention that this was going to be an expensive movie, a big $30 million epic, and that I was going to be directed in 20 years' time. And it was literally sitting on my shelf waiting for that reason. And only when I decided to make a short film, and I was literally bored and looking for a short film to make, I thought, well, why don't I just take the last 15 pages of that script and do it for a bit of fun? And then it became... Then it was this short film happened, the footage was looking great, and other people started going, well, why don't we do a feature? Why don't we, this looks great, keep it going. And I remember having a meeting with Jessica Pierce, my producer, where we were faced with this decision. Do we keep going, making this a feature, now that we've got this ball rolling, or do we stop and then I'll go, no, I'll stop and do my big one in the future? And I wrestled with that a lot. Going, oh man, this is the film I've been waiting to make my whole life. Do I really want to do it now? And in the end, I had to just take a leap of faith because the ball seemed to be rolling and wanted to be going. So I thought, well, okay, it's not going to be the big budget, gigantic thing that I always hoped, but I'll take a leap and let's go for it.
And are you happy with what's on the screen?
I am, actually. Yeah, I am. I mean, of course, there's always a bit of... you always see the compromise as the filmmaker and wish you had a little bit more to play with. But I nearly got everything I wanted. Nearly.
Now, one thing that's very admirable about the film is the recreation of the period. And the costumes, and especially the weaponry, look very authentic. Just tell me about the trouble that you guys went to with the costumes and with the decor and with the weapons and so on? Because it all looks quite realistic.
Well, the costumes we sorted out pretty early because we had a guy called Michael Chisholm, who is one of Melbourne's leading costume designers for film and television. And he had a wonderful wardrobe of stuff that he has gathered from many, many productions. And he literally gave us the keys to that and opened it up for us. So we had an expert on the costumes, and so he literally took care of that. And I think that's the thing to do when you're making a film like this. Just surround yourself with really good people. And as far as the weapons go, well, we knew what kind of weapons we needed. The trouble is they're all sitting on velvet under glass in collectors' homes and you can't rent them. So in the end, we actually made most of our weapons. They were fabricated by model makers and craftsmen to look like the real deal. But of course, they didn't fire. So we had to turn to digital effects in order to do that and complete that part of it.
And were either of you guys aware of Ben Hall before this project came to you? What was your level of knowledge about him?
For myself, growing up in the Pacific, the only kind of thing that gets out there was Ned Kelly. That was it. And obviously it's more so to do with his armor, which is so famous. So, but Ben Hall himself, John Gilbert, John Dunn, nothing at all. And it was only after Matt contacted me and said, oh, you look like this character, would you like to audition? Did I go on to Wikipedia? And I researched and I found about this, all these different characters. And then after that, you go beyond Wikipedia, of course, and you delve deep into the history books and whatnot. And you see how Ben Hall is not only, so far ahead of Ned Kelly in crimes, but how he committed them and whatnot, and the extent to what they actually did, taking over towns and whatnot. So that was my introduction to the character.
And Jack?
I must admit that the name rang a bell when I came across it, but I didn't know anything about Ben Hall. Didn't know anything about Johnny Gilbert, Frank Gardner. I mean, the names weren't unfamiliar, but the events, the history, completely lost on me at 25 years old, and I was like, this is outrageous. I should know about this.
Yeah. And what is your opinion of Ben Hall, the figure, the historical figure, now that you've made the film and played him?
Well, having played somebody, I'm always going to be on his side because in order to be him, I have to justify his actions.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to be a Ben Hall sympathizer.